Hello and welcome to. Ondo election live update on Vanguard Live. My name is Precious Chukudi and I have with me my co-host
Damola.
All right, we are trying to talk about the election update going on in Ondo State rather, sorry, and we have some of our attendees, people who have been monitoring the elections too, and they will be talking about what's going on in Ondo State as well as some of the hitches and glitches that happened around there. And I have with me Mr. Akeredolu Olajigbe, Executive Director, Emergency and Risk Alert. He joins us via Zoom. Good afternoon, sir. It's good to have you.
It's a pleasure being with you.
Also,
Thank you.
All right. Also, we have Yemi Fashipe, Youth Advocate. Good afternoon, Yemi. It's good to have you join us.
Good afternoon. How are you guys doing?
Well, very well. And we also have Bukola Idowu, Executive Director, Compartment Development Initiative. Good afternoon, sir. It's good to have you join us.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here.
All right. We'll be discussing the election update, and I would like to ask you first. I'm starting off with Mr. Akeredolu. So far, so good. What have you noticed in Ondo State election so far?
Well, let me quickly admit that I'm not practically there, but I have people on the ground there who have been feeding me with information in terms of representing emergency and risk alert. The election took off early enough, especially in Agboola area, which was not a bad thing. But then, let me commiserate with those who are involved in both mishap around the Bokoda in Ondo State. Have received that report too. And let me quickly say that at this site, the expectation was that Edo election will become a model for Ondo election. But that is not the report I'm getting currently because of the almost ubiquitous market for vote buying and vote selling. I think that is very, very disheartening to our democracy at this particular time. I've received such report. It's very disheartening. It's disempowering in terms of people make a voluntary choice in terms of who govern them. And let me quickly actually link this up with the condition of the people of Ondo State too. Of course, wherever you hear of vote buying, what should come to your mind is the precondition of poverty, precondition of penury, that will make people not to value a card, voter's card, that is worthy of liberating them from poverty itself. So it becomes a tool for a meal ticket for them when they are poor. But then that is short-sightedness. When you vote rightly, what you are determining what your condition, whether your condition will change or not, through the type of and nature of policy that will be put in place. You are determining whether you will have access to health care or not. You are determining whether your children will go to school or not. And almost every other thing is determined through the type of leader you enthrone with your vote. But when you lose the capacity to genuinely make decision, the right to vote for whoever will deliver all this to you, then you have shortchanged yourself, you have shortchanged society, you have denied democracy, and you have desecrated your own personal responsibility. And of course, you have desecrated your citizenship, because that is the power, that in fact, the ultimate power of ascertaining your citizenship, especially when you are old enough to vote. You are determined who governs other, particularly, you are equally determining the trajectory.
All right,
What will become of
just
those
hold your.
who are not yet.
All right, just hold your thoughts, because we want to also get the views of other guests who are also with us. And I would like to ask Mr. Bukola to respond to what you are saying, respond to what Mr. Tabenro is saying about vote buying and selling going on in Ondo election. Please, can you shed more light on that?
Thank you very much. Actually on ground here in Ondo State, and moved around, and we have monitors across the local governments. And among all the reports we've received at our situation group, we've received over 290 reports, and top on the list, and I can say like about 70% on the list is the issue of vote buying. This is happening. This is worrying, because it's been done with impunity, and it's been done with I think it's not good for our democracy. In some places, I can tell you, votes are being bought as high as 7,000 naira, and in some places 5,000. Now, there a location in our local government, voters are actually given a voucher to go and vote, and then you come back to bring the voucher to come and collect your money. In some places, we go and vote at back of the classroom or the back of the mosque to collect your money. But the most disheartening aspect of it is you voting and stylishly showing who you vote for, because it's supposed to be open secret ballot. So for me, I think we are already lowering the bar, and we can't exonerate the security agencies here, because in most cases they just take off their faces, they just take off their attention from what exactly is happening there, and they are giving the people free flow to begin to do that. But that is that on the part. But again, the citizens, for me, also looks like they are also ready to send their votes. And like Mr. Guerrero just said, probably it shows that our poverty in this nation is becoming deliberate by our leaders to be able to keep people to this particular period of time, so that 2,000 will be like 1 million to them, so that they can send their vote. So for us, and again, one of the things we have been monitoring is the issue of violence and the potential for violence. And we've received close to 56 cases of violence, and if you disaggregate it, we have close to 37 cases of pocket of violence in various places. Gunshots, most especially in Akure South, gunshot in Akure South, where specifically Okejebu, and then one person was stabbed at Ijomu and in Akure, and we have recorded cases at Owo, Idori, and Okitipupa. So these are what has been going on presently.
All right, I would like to also link it with Mr. Yemi Fashipe. They mentioned, the two of our guests have mentioned that the issues of vote buying and selling, and mentioned the fact that it shows how much poverty is in the land. What can you say more on that, Mr. Yemi?
Thank you. It's really disheartening. It's something that somebody like me finds very shameful. I just came back from my home polling unit too, and I noticed people were actually trying to collect money from some persons before they go cast their votes, and somehow, I don't know how they're doing it, but I know money is being passed around. So this is 2020, where we should be talking about electronic voting and all, and we are still here discussing having issues around vote buying and all. So it's actually disheartening, because I find it difficult to understand how it is easy for someone to allow 5,000 naira, 10,000 naira, 7,000 naira, or less than that influence their votes. It's really, really disheartening. I am ashamed that this is still happening at this time, and that's the situation across the board. It's not even a situation of one political party all the political parties are involved in this vote buying and selling, and I really do not. That's why sometimes when you try to hold the government to account, then they don't respect us or answer us at that point, because most of them actually bought their ways to power. And how somebody who imagine 10,000 to 7,000 naira to vote for one person, you can imagine the amount of money that will be allocated to each polling unit.
All right.
We have over 3,000 polling units in Nigeria, in Ondo states. So we can imagine the amount of money they will have to allocate to those polling units before one person can be given 7,000 naira. So, and this person, you expect whoever emerges winner of this election to enter into office and work well. How will he work well when already he's been committed, he's been indebted? I don't know how to explain it.
All right, I want to ask you, the issues of vote buying and selling, do you think is going to have a huge impact on the outcome of this election, Mr. Yemi?
Yes, 100% it is. If people see collect money, why are you collecting money? The reason why they are collecting money is because that money will probably influence their decision, electoral decision. So it's that means the election might just be, whoever wins this election might just be the highest bidder. That's the way it's going to be. It's really not going to be a function of actual competence, or probably a function of the how accepted the candidate or popular the candidate is, but now basically it's just going to be who has more money to throw around. That's the way I said it.
All right, Mr. Agboola, I'd like you to respond to what Mr. Yemi has said.
Well, of course, it's obvious. It's going to have impact. If those who are distributing money are not foolish, they know the consequence of what they are doing in terms of electoral victory, in terms of purchasing the victory at the election like this, especially when the dice is the pendulum could swing on any side of those who are contesting. But let me quickly say, and that is what I've been telling our people, and they must begin to take lesson and take note of that people are not oppressed because they are poor, but they are poor because they are oppressed until they are able to understand these dynamics of poverty. That poverty does not mean you should become idiot. Poverty does not mean that you should disenfranchise yourself. That poverty does not mean that you should lose your capacity to function in office of citizenship. Or there will be no liberation for them. The poor must know the only way they can shake off this taboo of poverty is to put a very good person that will come up with a very robust pro-poor policy that will catapult them out of dungeons of poverty.
All right, so
I think...
Please hold your thoughts, we'll get back to you. Okay, I think I'm asked to have Mr. Yemi. Mr. Yemi, please, since you're in Ondo, can you give us more reports about the card reader that failed to accredit PDP's Jegede?
Yes, I had similar problems too at my units, and I think the card reader EU is a technical EU. I don't think I think it's basically technical. I don't know why that is. I had to use that first. I had to wait too, then later to try it again, and it works. So because I feel the card reader is also a means to checkmate electoral fraud. So basically,
okay,
I don't think it's a. What did you say, please?
Sorry to cut you off, but I have to go to Mr. Bukola. Mr. Bukola, are there any issues of card reader failure in other polling units?
Sure. There are a lot of issues around card reader. I witnessed one that we have to. I personally escalated them because even as at 9:10 specifically, people have not been able to vote because the card reader was not working. And the PO guy there seems confused, doesn't even know what to do until I have to make a call that this is not working because the card reader is not working. So that is the card reader is there. Probably the issue have been, don't forget that almost all the card reader meant for Ondo State were burnt, and they have to go to the neighboring state to bring the new one they are using. So maybe the hurried configuration might be responsible for this, but I think this is one of the area of the challenge this election has faced.
All right, Mr. Oladribe, I would like to ask you the issues of card reader. Already, the Jegede made mention of the fact that INEC was creating a problem by it not being functioning. And do you think that politicians can actually, take advantage of the fact that the card reader was not functioning to undermine the elections?
The question is that all over the election, if you look at the trend, we have over-celebrated these card readers. After all, those who don't have card reader were still allowed to vote in Edo, and every time. Card reader has not become the actual standard because of imperfection. The imperfection that has been noted, the setting ablaze of the report has not even come out to actually know the cause of fire. So I think on this platform I've made it severally clear that even election rigging starts before election. It starts at the level of planning. It starts at the level not executing the execution of the plan. It's not a day job that just come from nowhere on the day of election. They are planned and they are strategically planned. What you are seeing is the operation. Failure of card reader. Look, if you want to use card reader, we should perfect the usage of card reader. This tale of on the day of you will hear the summer. Everything is brought bare that if you don't have, if we are going to use card reader, if you can't be captured, you can't vote. But at the end of the day, people are allowed to vote. So it's just like the choice is that of anybody. Is less fair this thing. It's not a standardized requirement of INEC. As far as the trend, if you do the trend analysis of those who use it or those who don't, you find out that we have not perfected it.
Okay.
And we are not, that is not good. At least we should be technologically conscious. These ideas of option B, if you can't be captured through malfunctioning card order, you can go ahead and vote. As aided, people should not actually be there to vote in some cases and some instances. Not specifically this Ondo election alone.
Okay.
So if we are not perfect about technology,
Mr. Olajibe, we'll get back to you.
We should begin to look at how.
We'll get back to you later. Mr. Bukola, ZLP's Honorable Ajayi, he mentioned that today's security arrangements has actually been compromised. So can you actually tell us, since you are there, that INEC and the security agents, can you say that they did not actually prepare enough for today's election?
Well, that is not correct. If you ask me, they were prepared. I think INEC was prepared for the election. The security agencies were prepared for the election. Now, what we should be talking about is the degree of that preparation, not that they were not prepared at all. Now, again, you also need to understand that there is planning and there is the actual. What that is, what you really meet, you will meet on the field. So for me, I think if things happened in a polling unit, and we might not use that to generalize, but in terms of preparation, I think they are prepared. But this is where I have issues. The issues I have, and the issue I have is just simple. Up till now, there has not been record of anybody that has been arrested for this electoral offense of vote buying. So, which means even the security agency are also accomplices in this particular issue. So, but in terms of planning, responding to thuggery, responding to violence, they have been doing that very, very well. So, and I think, and that has been what has been a contribution to what we are seeing now. But when you now talk about arrest in terms of vote buying, then they scored negative.
Okay, Mr. Yemi, please can you react to what Mr. Buki just said about the no arrest being made yet?
About what? I was not listening. Sorry.
Okay, the arrest. According to Mr. Bukola, I said due to the violence and some of the things that have happened there, that there has been no arrest yet. As regards to this vote buying. Can you react to that?
Yes, I think that there is a way they do this vote buying, and they carry the security operatives along. Like somebody said earlier, I don't know who, there is no way you can manipulate election process without the security operatives being compromised. So basically, I think it's an organized something with probably the security operatives, because they see these things. They're the one who have the powers to make arrests or probably stop it. So when it is allowed to happen, then it simply interprets that the security operatives has been compromised.
But a lot of things have happened before today. In terms of violence and all that, violent threats for today. Do you actually think that it will affect today's results and what is currently happening in Ondo State?
Well, in terms of violence, I think I want to give a level of kudos to the security operatives, because some arrests have been made in Akure that I'm aware of. Do you understand it? So two people have been arrested by the DSS and that we know of, which is probably connected to shootings and violence in some places. So I don't think what happened the pre-election, what happened before the election to probably have anything to do with the outcome of today, because we didn't have violence reports in the last 1 week to this election. The violence report we had was 2 weeks ago from 2 weeks back. So basically, I think that was where some of us were looking forward to a violence-free election today. And so far, though we've had news of violences in a few places, but then there's no way we can have an election, an election that is totally going to be free of violence. I think it's probably impossible in Nigeria. I don't know. But then I think so far, violence has not actually been reportedly high. You understand? I can only talk in the context of what I have heard.
All right. Still speaking on what's going on in Ondo State. Now, some CSOs have come out to say that. I'm talking to you, Mr. Yemi. That the invasion of some state governors might, have, like an undertone on the election results. What's your take on that?
Yes, I don't understand what those governors are doing here. I don't understand why you leave your state to come here for the election. I don't understand how that works. I don't know if it's a party procedure. I don't know what it is. It's not understandable. If you want to support your party person, you have done that in the campaign. I think you can only come for campaigns, and I think campaign stopped 2 days ago or thereabout. So if there's any governor that is still in this state that's not our own governor, we don't know what that person is doing here. I don't think they should be here.
All right, Mr. Bukola, what's your take on that? That some state governors were basically present in Ondo State and some people are talking about their invasion having an effect on the election.
That's absolutely shameful. For instance, I have seen senators here and I have seen governors here, and you ask me, why will somebody leave the north to come here? Why will somebody leave the east to come here? For what? You don't even have voters card to vote in those states. And many of them are staying in the hotel with their head, with their security details. And so, is that personal fund or government fund for the money meant to develop their state coming to spend it here? And it's also looking like most of the vote buying taking place. It looks like these are the people funding it. So, the truth is this: the winner of this election might not be what the people really want, but who the people really want. But the winner of this election might be the person that is able to spend more. you know, and that is dangerous for our democracy. And it's also dangerous to, it will be difficult to demand accountability when the time of governance really happens. So, whether we like it or not, the presence of some governors, of some senators, or some House of Rep member in the state who are not from this state and who are also spending their money, who are here to campaign even after the campaign period is over, we have huge influence on the outcome of this election.
All right, Mr. Yemi, I'd like to ask you, you know, some persons have said that a particular political party cannot afford to lose, you know, this election because it will have a huge, you know, impact on the geographical balance of, you know, the 2023 elections that will be coming up. What's your take on what they are saying?
Well, I think election is about the people. Election is not about, it's about the electorates. So it's not, it shouldn't be a function of the interest of a certain political party. Do you understand me? So I don't want to think along that line. I think if the electorate understands what they want and know how democracy functions and their own contribution towards the development of democracy in the society, they will understand that nothing should influence their choice of who to vote for.
All
so
right.
Basically, it shouldn't be.
Okay, no, go ahead. I'm listening.
Yeah, so it should not be a function of the interest of a particular political party. It should be a collective decision of the electorate.
Okay.
That is what an election is about.
Okay, I would like you to also rate the election so far. What have you seen? How would you rate the election in Ondo State versus the one that we experienced in Edo State?
Well, I think the when we can accurately rate this election after the election, because I think the election is still ongoing.
From what you've seen thus far, how can you rate it?
Yes, from what I've seen so far, especially in Akure where I reside, in the capital of Ondo State where I reside, so far I think it is so far it's not bad, so far it's good.
Will you say it's free and fair?
There has not been reports of.
Hello, Mr. Yemi. All right, Mr. Bukola, I would like to ask you, how would you rate the election? Because you've been very observant about what's been happening there in Ondo State. Would you rate it as a free and fair election? Mr. Bukola? Mr. Bukola? Can you hear me? We can't hear you.
I think you should you know, put on your audio.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm asking now.
Okay.
Yes, how can you rate the election thus far? I mean, you saw what happened in Edo State and now you're in Ondo and you made reports of vote buying and selling and you know what's been going on, the skirmishes here and there. I want you to rate the election so far.
Well, it's actually difficult to rate the election so far because it's still ongoing, and it's also, but we can rate the election in compartment. Now, when I say compartment, do we want to look at security? Do we want to look at INEC conduct? Do we want to look at logistics? Do we want to look at voters turnout? Do we want to look at COVID-19 COVID-19 protocol compliance? So, but it's too early to narrate generally. But if I want to take it by compartment to compartment, let's start with COVID-19 compliance that they talk about. And that is, for me, that is below average. There was no physical distancing. A lot of people, we've seen people that came to the polling units without face masks. And but in terms of physical distancing, that looks like zero in almost all the places, almost, but not all. But when you look at, to rate that, is below average. When you look at the security response to issues of incidents of violence, they will be responding well, but the only area where we want to score them low is their support for vote buying, which is terrible. Then again, when you want to look at logistics for INEC, in some places, voting start early. In some places, card reader were not functioning. So, but that I think is average. But when you look at the early commencement was okay. Then again, if you want to look at turnout, so far we've seen women coming out more than what we've seen in Edo State, and we've seen in most of the polling units the turnout was averagely okay until after the election, then where we now begin to compare. So having said this, but I still feel the election going on now. In some places, counting has started. So I want to say that the election going on now, we can still put it on the average for now.
All right. Okay. Since Mr. Olajigbe has joined us back, Mr. Olajigbe, according to reports, people in Ondo South have vowed to allow Akeredolu win. They vowed to vote for him, like 60% of their vote for him. Due to Jegede being from Ondo Central, because of Mimiko, who have spent 8 years in the government. So do you think this rotation thing is better than competence?
Well, I have never seen a language of democracy that is that recklessly collective. Democracy is about one man, one vote, one woman, one vote, one boy, one girl, one vote. It's not a collective decision. For people to have even uttered that out should tell you the type of latent violence that is going on in terms of election rigging, in terms of election manipulation of people, of voters, and every other thing. On the day of election, your name is your father's name. Another person's name is his or her father's name. You don't collectively take decision. You are not a political party on the day of election. INEC did not register Ondo South. It didn't register Ondo North. It didn't register Ondo Central. And I think this is worrisome when we begin to have this. Who is mopping up the election? Who is mopping up the cards, the vote of the people, to the extent of shamelessly being boastful that a particular percentage of vote will go to a particular candidate? It's unheard of in democracy. Our democracy is strange. Our democracy is not being run well. It's not being designed well. People are shortchanged. And of course, I'm taken aback by each time I hear about a block vote. Block vote is not a democratic practice, and it should never be allowed. The strongest in any zone has one vote. The weakest in any zone has one vote. On day of election, they are equal. So the collective decision is a very wrong thing. It should never be encouraged. It should never be supported. Rather, it should be investigated as part of the fraudulent practices that have dovetailed into our electoral culture.
Okay, Mr. Olajigbe, according to Akeredolu, Ajayi, and Jegede, they promised to abide, by the guidelines, for these to go for this election. So far, with what you've heard and what you've seen, do you actually think they're abiding by the guidelines?
What do you expect them to have said when they were being rallied around into taking decision on peace? It's just like a question of a boy. His father has some visitor. The father told the boy, he shouted that, give this, I'm going out now. Please make sure you give this, my visitors, 4 meats. When the father left, the boy gave them two meats. He served them two meats. One of the visitors said that, but your father said that you should give us 4 meats. He said, you are looking at my father's mouth, but you are not washing his hand when he was doing like this. So that is the situation with political leaders in Nigeria. They say what they mean, they don't mean, and they mean what they don't say. But the fact is that the body language is being read by their followers. And that is what dictates the steps of violence you see in most elections in Nigeria. I have several years, I have monitored, I have done election work and every other thing. But recently, I have some retrospection that is this really worth it? Why should we continue like this when these people continue to be so deaf, especially the political leaders, the political elites, and the political parties?
Okay, Mr. Please, I'll come back to you. Mr. Bukola, according to APC, to what APC is saying, they said, if they lose Ondo states, to PDP, to mean that PDP will have more than 10 states, with them now. So, and this will affect, the presidential election for 2023. Now, does this mean that, the party that actually have more states have the upper hand at the election, presidential election?
Yes, I think so, because like Mr. Jegede has said, our kind of democracy is funny, and it's funny in the sense that there is a bit of cohesion, and that's what most of the governors are doing, and they want to deliver by all means. So if you have, for instance now, if you have more states and the governors are able to find a means of taking over, and they said the mandate is delivered, you must deliver your state. So invariably, if you have more states, then there is hope for 2023. Don't forget, Edo and Ondo are just battle, are just chess play for 2023. So at the same time, but I'm not really sure if that statistic is also right. If APC have more states than PDP, I know PDP should have more states than APC, but all the same, it has implication, because the implication is that they don't even want to lose consecutively, 2 states consecutively. That might be dangerous, that might be dangerous for them. And that is why it's becoming a do or die affair, and that is why do or die affair in terms of finances, in terms of some of them opening the state treasury to pay for voters to vote. So this is not good for our democracy, and not only that is not good, it is not sustainable. It is not sustainable. For how long are we going to be opening the treasury to do this? I am sure people doing this are not paying with their own hard-earned money. So this is state resources, and whoever that can spend more is going to win more. And that is why they talk about the power of incumbency. They know what they mean. And so for me, it has a way of affecting 2023. And it has a way of affecting 2023 because the citizens themselves are not woken up to the reality, to say, money or no money, this is where we are going, this is what we are going to do, and we are going to vote right. Until we wake up, and this money will still be determine the trajectory of our election.
All right, with looking at what's been going on so far, do you think that there might be issues of the election being rigged, because the whole skirmishes, the violence, the vote buying, at this point, the ordinary layman would look at it and say that I don't think I can, look at this election as one of the very free and fair ones. So do you think that there are issues that maybe the elections might be rigged? I'm talking to you, Mr. Bukola.
I don't think the election can be rigged. It's difficult to rig election now. And I will explain what I mean. Now, rigging in terms of changing figures, carrying the ballot paper to print, and then they come and ballot stuffing is a bit difficult now, because the moment this is counted, they are going to upload it. So even citizens can start collating and know the result before it's declared. And this is my fear, that if whatever the citizen collates from the INEC website is totally different from what is being declared, this is what can spark violence. But having said that, what they are doing now is to disrupt the counting process, is to disrupt where the opponents are strong, so that that place can be cancelled. So it's just simple. The law, if the law says if there is violence in a place, and that is going to be cancelled. So what it means is that you go to the place where your opponent is strong, and then you cancel it. You destroy the place and cancel it. So, and that is why one of the things we are looking at closely, and that we have escalated to the security agencies, is that the counting period should be where their antenna need to be up. And And so the moment they can scale through this counting successfully, this is going to be uploaded, and the result might be difficult to change. But the actual rigging has started from the planning and from execution and the vote buying. So nobody is waiting for the result to be turned again. Vote buying is part of the rigging.
All right, Mr. Yemi, we just got a report saying that Jegede wins his polling unit. Are you surprised by it?
A candidate, whoever contests the governorship election and loses his unit, ward, or local government, does not have to contest again. If you're not popular in your immediate environment, then how do you intend to win an election? So even if you're going to lose any election, you should win in your immediate environment. That is your unit, your ward, and probably your local government. So I'm not surprised. Most of the candidates, probably all of them, are going to win their local governments. I mean, their polling units, rather. Especially the three leading candidates.
All right, you spoke about electronic voting before while we started, and I want to ask you this question. Is this something that you think might be able to work in this country? Because before now, I had a conversation with one of our guests here, and he made mention of the fact that electronic voting might not work because of the aged people that we have in the country who are not very familiarized with, the computer system and whatnot. So I would like to ask you, listening to what I have just said now, do you still think that it would work if we tend to port towards that region?
Yes, introducing electronic voting does not mean that we are going to cancel the one we have. You understand? It's just going to make it easy for people to vote. For those who don't want to come out, leave their comfort zones to vote, they'll do that online. And for the ones who does not have the exposure, or probably are not technologically conscious enough to do that, will go to the usual process. So why can't it work? We cannot remove this immediately and introduce the online voting system. So we are going to introduce gradually. So with time, you see that people will get to adjust to it. When GSM was introduced, do you want to tell me that every person in this country were able to use it at that point? But now, even these aged people you are talking about, they can pick and end calls because somebody taught them how to do it. So they're going to make it very easy for everybody to get used to. But that will happen over time. But we are just saying that let us start it first so that it can ease all of these unnecessary distractions during the election.
All right, Mr. Ondo Guber, I'd like you to respond to what he's saying on electronic voting. Now, one of the issues that we also have is the fact that hackers can hack anything. Is there a chance that if we try to tilt towards electronic voting, this will not be hacked to by people who think they are really, really smart?
Are people not hacking lives now? Are they not killing people because of election? It's not about hacker. We should discard our fears. Most of these things, I have identified them since. Most of the election work I have done have been published in a document titled Electoral Violence in Nigeria, a protection model as far back as 10 years ago when I was leading the process in National Need. But what I want us to be clear, we can't run away from our image. Running away from electronic voting is like running away from our own shadow. That is the global practice now. Of course, if you have would you have ballot snatching? It's no. Would they be budgeting all this among us money, which I count as wastage on securitizing election? It's not going to happen. Are you going to be having all these governors really landing themselves into one state because a governor is contesting election? It will not happen. Electorals, this will be removed. All these encumbrances that even expose people to danger will be removed. I think we should not be fixated in terms of living a cake life and finding it at the best. The fact is that we are ridiculing ourselves. What we are going through now, what we are seeing and hearing is not election. Okay, if people could vote in their home now, who will now go and be looking at their computer to give them money? Because you won't even be sure. You won't even be there when they cast the vote. It's at the pleasure of the voter. So all these things, but the only thing that you should be concerned about is the capacity for us to mobilize infrastructure to support and sustain electronic voting. But we can do it as a nation. But will they allow it to work? Where you have politicians who call themselves Democrats, who wants to be in position of authority without election, they don't even left to them. They don't even want election to hold. Just install me as your governor. Just install me as your senator. That has been the conscious practice of average Nigerian politician, and that is what is the reason behind the mobilization of people to unleash mayhem on opponents, and of course to disrupt the electoral process and procedures.
All right.
So it's not about we can do it. For those who are willing, nothing is impossible.
All right.
And to those who are unable, capacity can initiate it.
Thank you, Mr.
Process can be initiated.
All right, Mr. Bukola, can you just tell us the general mood in Ondo State right now?
Well, please, if you permit me, let me just quickly contribute and just briefly to the last discussion.
Okay.
I agree with Mr. Aladube about the electronic voting. You see, our organization has done an extensive research on this, and we released a report on that. I think, one, we need to understand that electronic voting is the way to go. But when we talk about electronic voting, people are mistaking it for internet voting. Internet voting is where you sit at in your house, and online you vote. That may not really work in Nigeria because that is possible even to be hacked. But electronic voting is, you see, what we are practicing now is semi-electronic voting because card reader is electronic. When you go to do your registration, it's electronic. You do biometric, it's electronic. It is the voting, thumb printing that is manual. But when we replace the thumb print, the paper with machine, now that so you can't show a party agent as at that time, then we are likely going to be having sanity a bit. Again, I also feel it is our problem is not even the electronic voting that is going to give us a credible election. Our problem is fundamental, is structural, is endemic, and this is what I mean. Can we begin to look at the remuneration of the people going for this political office? Because, for instance, now, why will somebody go and spend this kind of amount to become a governor? Then there must be something there. Nobody can empty his bank account because you want to serve the state. Nobody. But there must be something more than it. And that thing that is more than that money, if that can be checked, then you will now begin to have intellectuals that are going to contest elections. So for me, we need to look at that electronic voting in the coming electoral act amendment, number one. Then we need to now begin to reduce the amount of Jews in those particular political offices, and that will reduce this. And then to round it off now, the mood in Akeredolu now is calm as present. The mood in Ondo State is calm. From the report from all our monitor is calm. Voting is ongoing. Results from the polling unit are trickling in, polling unit. So we are waiting for the final collation, local government by local government, word by word. But as at present, we've not the mood is still calm, and that is what is going on now.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Bukola Idowu, Executive Director of Compartment Development Initiative. Also, Mr. Jegede and Agboola, Executive Director of Emergency and Risk Alert. Thank you for joining us. And Mr. Yemi Fashikpe, Youth Advocate. Thank you also for joining us on Ondo Live Election Update here on Vanguard Live.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, you can remember to like, share, and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen. as long as you want to get up to date stories, what's happening in Ondo State and everywhere around the world, go on our website www.vanguardngl.com to find out more of our top stories. Till we come your way next time, I remain Precious Chukudi and my co-host
Damnala Obushake.
Thank you for watching and have a fabulous weekend.